Digital Africa Media presents Everything Digital with Faith History.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's Everything Digital, the show where we bring you everything cool, everything hip, and yes, that's right, everything that's digital in your world today. And as always, I'm your hostess with the mostest, Faith History Insa, and I will be your digital guide on this series. So today, what are we talking about? We are going to be talking about building and growing and scaling your own podcast. Now, I've had a lot of people come at me in the DMs and reach out to say that they want to find out more about this topic. So today, finally, we've put it together. All right. So what is a podcast? Let's get right into it. A podcast is actually a blend of words between iPod and broadcast. Cool, huh? Well, a podcast is basically a digital audio file that is made available on the internet for downloading to a computer or mobile device. So typically it's available as a series that people can subscribe to, and then they can get installments automatically, right? You use tools like podcastinsights.com to do things like that. A little history about podcasts. Previously known as audio blogging, it has its roots dating back to the 1980s. But by 2004, it became quite popular. By the end of 2004, searching for podcasts on Google actually just gave you about 500 hits. But just a year later, that number had risen up to 100,000. Like, what is this? 100 million. That's mad. Anyway, some 3,000 podcasts have been published by the end of 2005. And now there are over 850,000 active podcasts with over 54 million podcast episodes currently available worldwide. That's a lot of podcasts, guys. And the revenue for podcasts are expected to top 1 billion in 2021. So if you're not podcasting, this is a good time to start, I think. Now that we've gone through some history about podcasting, let's go straight to starting your own podcast. So here are 5 main steps required to make your podcast, and I'm going to break it down for you. First things first, you want to think about a name, a topic, and what you aim to achieve, right? So you need a name that clearly communicates what your podcast is about. For instance, mine is called Everything Digital with Faith History, has my name in it, has what I plan to achieve in it, what it's about, right? And you need to know your why. Why are you starting this podcast? What niche will it be in, and who is it for? Who are you trying to communicate with? So this is very important stuff. Second thing you need to think about is planning your podcast episode format. These are some of the things that, right off the bat, you're going to think, okay, am I going to have interviews? Is there a co-host? Am I going to have different segments, or is it going to be one straight flow? And there are podcasts that are shorter. They could be up to like just a minute long, while some can be over an hour long. So you have to think also about the timing. What about your opening and your closing intros, and your outros? How's that going to sound like? Will you want something professionally done? Will you do it yourself? Do you even do you create music with it? Like, what are you going to do? So you need to start thinking about that. And in order to help you think about that, well, we have just a little over 200, podcast episodes of Everything Digital. So just go on our website and download that, and you can listen to our intros over and over and over again. Or you can listen to other people's podcasts and get ideas from there. Next up on my list is now you have to record your podcast, right? So, the right gear and software is very important. Now with the COVID lockdown, a lot of people are working from home. And so, even I've had to go into, recording my podcast with Anchor. There's other tools like Spreaker, Zencaster, and some of these are available on the mobile or desktop or both. So it just depends on what you like and what really works for you. And you can use your phone's internal voice recorder, or you can get an external mic, make it sound better, more quiet and more professional. So you just need a quiet space. And I know somebody who records in her wardrobe. Not me, just a friend of a friend of a friend. Okay, so if you have access to a recording studio, by all means, please go for it. That's my favorite personally, because I love recording studios. I love the microphone. I love the sound. I just love how clean everything sounds. And then you should also have your script, so this could be an outline, something so simple that just guides your flow so that you're not rambling. And then, if you don't have a script, you can get someone to script that for you, or you can at least have a list of topics that you want to talk about and just try to go through it one time so you can time yourself. So if you know it's going to be a 15-minute show or it's going to be a 20-minute show, you get an idea of how long it's going to take you to do the entire show. And now let's talk about editing. So you're going to need to edit your podcast with the right set of tools. And let's say you're using Anchor, for instance, which is one of the tools that I use the most. It allows you to actually edit the audio in the app, even though, I like it to be a little extra. So I'll send it to my sound engineer and then he'll take care of it, and he'll just clean it up even more. And on the desktop, you even get more editing options beyond mobile. So you can add background music, transition sounds, you can add advertising, you can even split the audio and move segments around. Or you can use, Audacity on your laptop. It's stable and reliable. If you're using a studio, a sound engineer, like I said, will be editing it for you, which would make it really sound amazing. So, some people just don't even do too much editing. They'll just put that background music and, it just comes out perfect. So it just depends on what you're trying to go for and the vibe that you're trying to go for and what your audience likes. Okay, you got to pay attention to that. Final on my list, you need to publish your podcast to a host, and you also want that host to have directories attached. And this is one of the reasons why I enjoy Anchor, because they actually have a lot of directories. Once you have your podcast on Anchor, they will distribute it automatically to all the different online platforms, to many of the different online platforms. And depending on your settings, you could have it up to 9 to even more platforms than that, including Apple Podcast and Spotify. Let's go to a quick break. When we come back, we want to talk about, growing your podcast, building an audience for your podcast. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to my podcast and radio show. It's called Everything Digital. My name is Faith History. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
And we're back. All right. So before we went on break, we were talking about podcasting, and I mentioned some of the things that you need to think about when setting up your very own podcast, including things like, what are you going to be talking about? What's going to be the name of your podcast? What are you going to record it with? What kind of software are you going to use? What about editing it? And of course, publishing it to a podcast host. And now that we've talked about recording the podcast, let's talk about growing your podcast. All right. So growing your podcast audience is going to take a lot of patience and perseverance, especially right here in Nigeria, just because, Nigerians, we just not as up on podcasting or listening to podcasts the way the rest of the world is right now, or the Western world rather. So we're in our early days of listening to podcasts, but in the next couple of years, it's definitely going to be a big thing. So this is a great time for you to start. I mean, I've been podcasting now for 5 years, and I don't have as many listeners as I would love to online. And most of our listeners are right here on the radio show, just because people don't know about it. And a lot of our listeners actually come in from the US and the UK. So I would love more Nigerian listeners. And I think podcasting is definitely a nice growth area. So let's talk about you and your podcast and how to grow your podcast. So again, like I said, it takes a lot of time and effort. And, sometimes it can feel, like a downer. You created your podcast, you're receiving a few listens, but, you just have to stay positive, keep your great mindset, positive mindset, and be persistent and grow your podcast. So here are some tips. Number one, you need to make sure that your quality is good. People always love quality, and especially with audio, they always say, it's audio or video. People always choose audio. Like, they need that audio to be good. So make sure your sound quality is good. That is why I send mine off to an engineer. Shout out to you, Bumi. And before that, shout out, to any who started the podcast with me. So, I really appreciate good sound. So try as much as possible to have clear recording sound, and just try to avoid like explosive bombs, PMB, and then whatever value you're offering has to be of great quality, whether it's entertaining, whether it's informative or just educative. People will come back for more once they know that the quality is actually top notch. Next thing up, you need to appeal to your audience. In the beginning, when you decide on your niche, keep that in mind. Now that you're within that niche, identify your unique audience that is interested in your topic and keep finding that sweet spot between what you like and what they like, and then tailor your topics to fit that criteria. Here's another thing. You would think that it's a podcast, so we're communicating, right? But, you don't just communicate on the podcast. So you got to create the podcast, you got to push it out, and then you have to use social media to then interact with your audience and work to build a community around your podcast. Because, podcast is kind of like a one-way street, right? It's different from live radio where, people can call in. With a podcast, you've dropped it out there. They might not be able to reach back out to you, but they want to communicate with you. It might be something that you said or something that resonated. We communicate with our listeners in so many different ways. I send out an email list. If you're not part of my email list, go to eDigital Africa right now and sign up for the email list. So we'll send you weekly emails. That's a great way to communicate with me. Again, we are at eDigital on social media. That's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Instagram is a great way that we communicate with people. So if you want to talk to me or, you want to suggest new topics or you want to give me comments about this particular topic, feel free. Just go to, at eDigital Africa on any of the social media handles that I've mentioned and, just communicate with me. That's how easy it is. Plus, we have our WhatsApp group. So you can see all the different platforms that we've created just to communicate back to our listeners. So our WhatsApp group, you can reach out to us on 0813 888-0585. Again, that is 0813-888-0585. If you want to join our WhatsApp community, and that's another way to communicate with us, with me and my team. So, you may want to build your own Facebook group or your Telegram group or even on Instagram or a website. Just create a space for your community to specifically engage with you and engage with the content and with each other, right? It's a community. They might have ideas or they might have something they want to discuss, or because they all have you in common or your podcast in common, they become friends and they support each other. And I just love the growth of our community. So give your community an opportunity to learn more about you and create those platforms for them, one or two or all. I have a team, so it's easier for me to create all those platforms. But if you're just going about it on your own, you might just think, WhatsApp plus, Instagram plus, Twitter is too much. Okay, so just pick one platform that you're going to use to engage and then stick with that and then grow as you grow. All right. How about that? Do that today. All right. So here's another thing that you need to think about. You need to give your audience an opportunity to learn more about you through Q&As. So even on the podcast, so be sure to check out their profiles and give them some love. So be human, Q&As, guys. And with that, I'm queuing myself to ask you, are there any questions that you have for me? Please DM us at eDigital Africa. Go on Instagram, DM us or Twitter, and we would love to answer those questions. I know I get questions through the emails all the time. So please join our email list and just ask us any questions. It might be on a topic that I've talked about before. It might be something that you saw on YouTube, on our eDigital Africa YouTube, or you might just have a personal question for me, and my handle is @faithhistory. So you can also DM me as well. Now, here's another thing you need to think about. You need to reach out to others. You need to network in your niche and in the podcasting world via social media and email. So, podcast events, niche podcast events are happening, and you can just introduce yourself and your podcast. Again, keeping in mind that in Nigeria, podcasting is still is very small. It's a small community of podcasters, but, just keep networking and let people hear your show and share. And then also listen, listening when you network is so important. You might just have you might hear different perspectives. Somebody might give you a different idea about what you're doing or feedback, and that will help you grow. So be open to advice, critiques, feedback, reviews, and so much more. And then make yourself easily discoverable. Submit your podcast to as many directories as possible. This is, again, one of the reasons why we use Anchor, because it just helps you to just automatically, subscribe, or rather submit to all the different, directories. So here's another thing that we do all the time: repurpose your content. This also helps you become easily discoverable online. We repurpose our podcast content onto our Pinterest, and we make YouTube videos, and we also use it for our email, marketing. So, there's so many ways, plus Instagram, of course. So there's so many different spaces where we use our podcast, we reuse it. There are other ways that you can reuse it on your own. You can provide transcripts or overviews. You can write blog posts, and, just use graphics and make your podcast even more interesting. And always add a call to action, because if you don't ask listeners to do anything, then they just won't do it, right? They'll just listen and be like, oh yeah, great show. Thanks, Faith, and they just won't do it. So this is why I always tell you guys what I want you to do. If I want you to go to the website, I'll tell you, go to edigitalafrica.com. If I want you guys to email me, I'll tell you, go to edigitalafrica.com and email me. Or I want you to go to our Instagram, I'll say, go to Instagram, edigitalafrica.com. And, that's how I tell you what to do. So what do I want you to do for today? Absolutely all those things. Go to edigitalafrica.com, go download our, worksheet, to find out how to be an influencer. Check out our website, tell us what you need, and we will be there for you. And then another thing you need to think about when you're growing your podcast is you need to monitor your stats. A lot of podcast hosting platforms will provide you with statistics. You got to keep your eye on that and see which content is gaining traction. And you can advertise, your podcast as well. You can advertise on Facebook, Instagram, and you can also advertise using other people's email list, and those are all the tips that I have for you today in terms of starting and growing your podcast. You're well on your way to becoming a podcaster. Now, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, if you love to talk like me, you have a great topic or a great idea for a topic or a niche or a problem that you feel like you can solve, right? Like you have enough information or you can research information in order to solve that problem, then you ought to definitely think about podcasting. And if you, decide to go for podcasting, please feel free. If you have any questions at all, I'm here to help you, mentor you. All you have to do is, send me a DM on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook at eDigitalAfrica. Again, you can join us up on WhatsApp. Our WhatsApp is 0813 888-0585. And you can always tweet at me, reach out to me. My name is Faith History, and you can DM me on Instagram as well. I'll be sneaking in there and checking it out. So you can do that as well. And we can talk more about what you're podcasting about. All right, let's go one more quick break. When we come back, I'll round up for you on a few of the podcasts that I love listening to and why. All right, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And so we're back. Like I said, before we went on this final break, I wanted to share a couple of the podcasts that I've been checking out. Number one on my list is Nigerian American, the podcast by LD the Don. Oh my goodness. It's not a lot of episodes, but really amazing, well produced, high top class. I really love it. Next one that I want you to check out is Jesus and Jollof by Von Orji and Lovia Ajayi. So they're Nigerians based in Hollywood, based in the US, Chicago, and two women, Naija, making jokes and just cracking us all up. So I love that so much as well. Another one by a friend of mine, which is really nice, Not Just Nollywood. So if you're into entertainment scene, from a movie perspective, as well as, just find out how people get to create she talks to different creatives, directors, producers on their creative journey, how they get to do that and what their, what their challenges and obstacles are and how they surmount that and get the work done. It's very, very entertaining. You should check that out. It's called Not Just Nollywood. And that's pretty much it for my top podcast. There's also a couple other ones based out of here in Nigeria. There's Loose Talk, by 3 journalists. Sage Alonge and a couple other guys, and you should check that one out. They've also been running since 2016, I believe. So, and they're quite popular. So Loose Talk is a good one to check out, if you just want to find out more about, I think they're on a break right now though, but they did do at least 200 episodes before they went on that break. So check out Loose Talk for sure. I think you'll enjoy that. And speaking of loose, there's also Loose Media. They started hosting a bunch of podcasts around relationships and issues that Nigerian youth don't really want to talk about. And so that's Loose Media. So check that out. They also have like a Loose Talk podcast that they launched I think late last year. So check that out. Go Google that. So that's it for me today, though. Those are my top podcasts that I listen to. If you guys have a podcast that I've missed out on, the Nigerian podcast, by the way, that I've missed out on or that is on the radar, is starting up, you think I would be interested in it because it's hot, it's interesting. I like funny stuff and I like stuff that is really well produced. Please share it with me. Email me at faithhistory@gmail.com, or you can tweet at me or DM me at Faith History or eDigital Africa. And that's the show for us today. I loved bringing it to you as always. And I'm looking forward to being here, same place, same time next week. Bring you more show. Until next time, it's bye for now from me, your girl, Faith History. Toodles!
For more on this topic, visit www.eDigitalAfrica.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
Everything Digital is proudly brought to you by MTN. This is a Faith History production.